Hey guys, this is Nick, and today marks the 1028th day since the release of Elementary OS 5, which is the current installment. And coincidentally, it's also the day that Elementary OS 6 Odin releases, finally, after 3 years. So sure, it's been a very long time, but this is one of the biggest distribution releases I have ever reviewed, all distros and all desktop environments included. So let's see what we can make of this desktop. Speaking of desktops, do you want to own your own desktop in the cloud? If so, today's sponsor is for you. Shells gives you access to a full-on desktop, virtually from any device that you want to use. It's compatible with Linux, with Windows, macOS, Android, iOS, and they have a desktop app, or you can use it in your web browser. The setup takes less than 5 minutes, account creation included, and then you can boot into any desktop you like, from your favorite Linux distro like Ubuntu, Manjaro, MX Linux, OpenSUSE, or a Windows desktop, or even an Android one if that's what you prefer. So basically, shells.com will give you access to any desktop that you need to test things up, to try things out, to deploy on, whatever you need it for. Pricing starts at $495 per month, but you can also spec out your own shell with a crazy number of virtual CPU cores and a crazy amount of RAM. You can also pick on which data center you want your shell to be hosted, and also they have automatic backups and snapshots. Now, if you want to run multiple systems without any performance cost to your actual device, click the link in the description below to learn more about shells.com. Okay, let's begin. And as always, Odin Elementary OS 6 warrants a complete reinstall of your system. There is no upgrade path from Juno to Odin, so you will have to reinstall your system to move to the next version. That will give you the opportunity to look at the new installer they developed. You might have already seen it in PopOS, as the guys at System 76 have been using it even before Elementary moved to it themselves. It's much more streamlined, much more simple and beautiful, and it's really fast compared to the Ubuntu installer. It leaves all the user config and network setup for after the first reboot, so you can get straight to the point. You'll also notice upon reboot that Elementary OS has a slicker boot experience, displaying your manufacturer's logo instead of its own. Now, in terms of look and feel, Elementary OS 6 changes a lot of things, but not on the surface. First, once you reboot, you're greeted with the onboarding tour of the system that lets you pick between the light theme and the new dark mode. All the default apps and the system components will adopt it, including the dock, the panel, and its indicators. Third-party apps have to opt into it to ensure that the dark mode doesn't break them, but I would expect most apps to comply pretty quickly with it. The dark mode can be further configured in the preferences to start and end at specific times of day, or even follow sunset and sunrise, which is pretty cool. On top of that, you can now change accent colors. The default is still a light blue, but you now get a ton of different colors to choose from. These will change the selection color, the button color, the switches and checkboxes, and some text elements all around the UI. And all those colors are all the ones listed on this little poster here. You can even pick the dominant color of your wallpaper as an accent, so that the accent color changes as you change your background. Now, this is nicely complemented by the new theme, which isn't a huge departure from the Elementary OS 5 one, but it still looks a lot nicer. Buttons are more raised, more tactile, rounded corners are on every menu and window border, the header bars are more contrasted and legible, and menus have a bit more space. The default font has also been changed to Inter, which is really pretty and looks more professional than the previous one used in Juno. In my opinion, Elementary OS 6 looks stunning, but then again, I was a fanboy all along. And all these customization options really let you tweak the system to your liking in terms of color, dark mode, accent color, which means that you won't have to go hunt for other themes that much. Now, the icons themselves haven't changed all that much, so if you weren't a fan of that cartoony style, you probably will want to change them as well after you install Elementary OS 6. Now let's move on to the desktop. And the default layout is exactly the same as what you used before, but there have been a lot of improvements to every single component of it. Now, the most prominent feature is obviously the addition of multi-touch gestures on laptops and touchpads. These are one-to-one gestures where the content moves as you move your fingers, and they're extremely smooth and well integrated. 3 fingers up will take you to the multitasking view, and swiping left and right with 3 fingers will move to the next or previous desktop. You can also configure these in the settings with 3 or 4 finger swipes, horizontal or vertical, as well as pinching gestures. Now, gestures, to me, are vital to a good laptop experience, and Elementary OS 6 delivers probably the best that I've ever seen on any other distribution or desktop, especially considering that they work on x.org and they're not using Wayland. Now, these gestures are also present in other system components, in the date and time indicator, in the notification center to dismiss notifications, or even in the settings and the app center to go back and forward. You can even swipe between users on the login screen. Now, I don't know why, but it makes me feel like I swiped left on myself on Tinder, and I'm really not sure how I feel about that. The notifications were always a weak point on elementary OS Juno. They weren't really actionable and didn't display some graphical elements correctly. Elementary OS 6 fixes that with a completely redesigned notification system. These now can sport status badges to let you know if the action you're looking at is a success or not, and notifications can display buttons so you can immediately act on them. They also follow the dark theme and can be dismissed with a two-finger touchpad swipe. We'll have to wait and see if third-party apps take advantage of this new system though. Notifications also appear in the notification center, which has been completely redesigned as well. It looks more like the new notifications and it groups them by apps. All system indicators also have received helpful tooltips to give you more information and shortcuts you can use to mute the system, to go into Do Not Disturb mode and stuff like that. Speaking of these indicators, they've also received a lot of love. The sound indicator now displays available inputs and outputs, and you can select them directly to quickly switch between them. The power indicator will now show more devices and their battery status, and clicking a device will open a popover with more detailed information about its battery and its total capacity. There is still no support for applications putting themselves in the system tray though, so if you use Nextcloud, Steam, Discord, OBS or a lot of other things, you might want to find a workaround to re-enable that. You can also choose to display an accessibility indicator that will let you enable multiple accessibility features, like a screen reader, on-screen keyboard, or various click and key parameters. Finally, there are smaller tweaks, like right-clicking on a header bar to take a screenshot of the app, displaying the window titles in the multitasking view, a right-click menu on the desktop to access a few quick settings, or the ability to automatically move maximized windows to a new virtual desktop like on macOS. Now, this last feature is extremely useful on laptops. You can open each app maximized and swipe left or right on the touchpad to change the app you're looking at. That's a super practical workflow on a laptop. It's top-notch. Now, sadly, Elementary OS 6 still doesn't support fractional scaling. Why, Elementary? Why? In its place, you have a setting that lets you change the text size, and that will also increase the size of buttons and various elements. But it doesn't work in all applications and it doesn't scale some icons, so it ends up looking a bit borked. It also doesn't apply per monitor, which means that the whole system will be scaled up. So if you have a 1080p monitor with a 1440p laptop screen, if you make things right on the laptop screen, everything's gonna be way too big on the 1080p monitor. And if you want stuff to be right on the 1080p monitor, everything will be way too small on the laptop display. It's not a replacement for fractional scaling. It is time this thing got implemented. Sure, it makes things a little bit blurry, it uses a little bit more GPU power, but it's a needed feature. Now let's talk about applications. And the application set that Elementary ships out of the box has received a bunch of love as well. First things first, Elementary OS 6 is moving to Flatpak. All App Center apps will now be distributed through Flatpak, and a few default apps are as well. This gives more security as each app is now sandboxed, and you can manage permissions per app in the settings, including for apps that come from FlatHub or other third-party remotes. Speaking of which, Elementary OS doesn't include FlatHub by default, but if you try and install a Flatpak app from FlatHub, it will add that repo automatically, so you can add all these apps in the App Center as well. So Odin sees the arrival of a brand new application called Tasks. It's a simple to-do list app reminiscent of Apple's reminders on macOS. It can sync with CalDAV tasks, like on Nextcloud or Google Tasks, and you can create multiple lists, change the font color, create tasks with date-based or location-based reminders. But it doesn't do recurring tasks for now though, so it's not going to replace Planner for me anytime soon, but it's still handy to have that out of the box. It's also distributed as a Flatpak. And now I want you to try to say Flatpak tasks 10 times in a row very fast. Try it. The file manager changes a bit in terms of behavior. It used to be single click only to navigate and open files, but now it uses a double click to open files to avoid misclicks and errors. Navigation between folders is still single click. The sidebar has been revamped with nice animations when dragging a bookmark to it. The grid view can now be smaller than before, and emblems have been added to files to communicate permissions or new files added to a Git project, for example. The file chooser is also now provided through Flatpak, so Flatpak apps can always use the right file picker on Elementary OS instead of using the GNOME one or KDE's one. The default web browser is still GNOME Web, but it's changed a lot. It's provided through Flatpak for faster updates, and it now supports intelligent tracking protection. It has a new reader mode to get a simpler page reading experience. You can navigate backwards and forwards using the 2-finger swipe gestures, and it follows your dark theme if the website supports that. On that note, websites should all support dark theme, because I can't stand another full pure white website opening on my pitch black dark theme. My retinas will not survive that. So all these improvements were already in GNOME Web, they are just new to Elementary OS. But GNOME Web still lags behind in terms of performance, compatibility and stability compared to Firefox or Chromium-based browsers. There's also a new, completely rewritten Mail app. It integrates with the all-new online accounts, which is to say setting an IMAP email account. The online accounts have been rewritten, but they only support IMAP and CalDAV for now, so no Google, Outlook or Exchange integration here. These probably will be added over time. Mail kinda looks exactly like the app it replaces, but it's a lot more stable. Each email is sandboxed and it supports right-to-left languages and accessibility features. It's still a pretty minimal client and you still can create folders or labels, but it's serviceable. The calendar app is pretty much the same as before, except it now integrates with the CalDAV part of the online accounts to show events and tasks, which is handy. It can also import ICS files, finally, and it works better offline. Now, the Elementary OS terminal has expanded its copy protection notification to multi-line pastes and pastes that include sudo. This should give more information to newcomers when they paste stuff from the internet. Is it finally the end of the sudo rm-rf/star meme? Probably not. The zoom levels are now per tab. Tabs can be reloaded from the right-click menu, and you can move tabs around and switch between them with keyboard shortcuts if you want. These are displayed in the right-click menu of each tab. When a task has completed in the terminal, you'll also get a notification with a badge and some text to let you know if it failed or succeeded. Code, the Elementary OS text editor /IDE, has also been improved. You can quickly switch between Git projects thanks to a new project button. Closing a project now closes all of its files as well. You can also create branches and switch to and from branches directly from code. And you can do a full text search within folders. Code also has a Vim mode with more Vim commands, and it now saves its state better, including the cursor position and the state of the sidebar. Now, some other apps also have received a few improvements. The camera app can now switch between multiple cameras. It can mirror the image and adjust brightness and contrast. Once a video is recorded, you'll also get a notification with a button to open the video file immediately. The screenshot utility can be dragged from anywhere in the window, and you can drag the preview of your screenshot to other apps to open it in there, instead of using the copy to clipboard button or the save button. Now let's finish this already lengthy video on a tour of the system features as well. Odin is based on Ubuntu 20.04, which is more than a year old at that point. It's an LTS release, so it will still get hardware enablement updates to support newer hardware, but libraries in the repos are going to feel a bit out of date for people who need bleeding edge stuff. Then again, these people probably weren't interested in Elementary OS to begin with. Applications are handled through Flatpak, so there is no problem here. You will get updates for these and you won't have to rely on the older apps available in the repos. Odin also now supports LVFS for Linux Vendor Firmware Service. This allows it, and a lot of other distros, to get firmware updates from manufacturers that support the standard, including Dell, Intel, HP, Logitech, Wacom, and a lot more. OS 6 still doesn't ship a system monitor, so I installed GNOME's one, and at idle the system used 1.1 GB out of 16, which is on par with what I've seen on my tests of Mate in Fedora or KDE on Neon. It should run on most devices without a hitch. And before you come to the comments and paste your super low RAM usage for your system, remember, the more RAM you have on Linux, the more your system is going to use out of the box to make sure that things stay speedy. So if you have less than 16 GB of RAM, of course your system is going to use less RAM at idle. So, was the long wait worth it? Well, as an Elementary OS fan, I'd say sure, yes, it really was. The look and feel improvements with the dark mode and the accent colors are an amazing addition to the system. The move to Flatpak will ensure that app developers don't hesitate to distribute their apps on Elementary OS, and that elementary OS apps are available elsewhere as well. The multi-touch gestures are also incredibly useful on laptops. The foundations of that system took a while to build, but I've got the feeling that this transition work was necessary to ensure that elementary OS can move faster and get bigger updates in the future. You've got to remember, elementary OS uses a rolling model for its desktop and applications. All these components will keep receiving updates until the end of life of the distro when they shift focus to developing OS 7. So not everything is perfect, of course. OS 6 still doesn't support fractional scaling, which seems to be a conscious choice, but it's still a problem for a lot of people. Online accounts are currently limited to IMAP and CalDAV, and you can't edit those accounts when they're created. And the system tray icons still aren't displayed, which again is on purpose, but it's still annoying. Now moving to OS 6 will be a no-brainer upgrade for people who are using OS 5, even though you're gonna have to reinstall the whole system. That's another problem as well. But people who weren't convinced with elementary OS before won't be satisfied with elementary OS 6 either. It's a huge upgrade, but it's an upgrade in elementary OS's direction. If you weren't a fan of that direction, then Odin is still not going to be for you. Now for me, it's definitely going to end up on my Slimbook Pro X14. On my desktop though, I think I'm gonna stick to KDE for the time being. We'll see if I move to elementary OS in the future. So this video was made possible by Slimbook. If you don't know about them, they're based in Valencia, Spain. They make Linux desktop and laptops. They ship worldwide. They have all the keyboard layouts you might want. They have stuff for all budgets, for all needs, from the smallest NUCs to the biggest gaming laptops. I only use their stuff nowadays and I can only recommend them. So if you need a new Linux hardware device, click the link in the description below. They are super good products. So thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't hesitate to like and subscribe. Or you can also dislike and tell me why in the comments if you didn't enjoy. If you want to support me, you can join my Patreon subscribers and YouTube members, and you'll get access to a weekly Patreon cast and the right to vote on the next topics I'll cover. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!